What happens when you follow incomplete woodworking plans?
You think you're following the plan correctly, but the result still falls apart. It usually doesn't happen right away. At first, everything feels fine. You've got your materials laid out, the measurements seem clear enough, and the first few cuts go smoothly. There's a sense that this time the project might actually come together the way you imagined. Then, somewhere around the middle, things start to drift. A measurement doesn't quite match the diagram. A joint feels tighter than expected. A step jumps ahead without explaining how you got there. You pause, go back, reread, and realize something is missing, but you can't quite tell what. So you do what most people do. You improvise. You adjust the cut slightly. You assume the diagram is close enough. You fill in the gaps with your best guess. And for a moment, it feels like you've recovered. Until the next step. Now that small adjustment starts to compound. Pieces that should align don't. Angles feel slightly off. You find yourself forcing parts together, convincing yourself it will straighten out later. But it doesn't. By the time you reach the final assembly, you're no longer building with confidence, you're negotiating with mistakes. And that's where frustration really sets in. Because at that point, it's no longer clear what went wrong. Was it the measurement? Was it your cut? Was it something you misunderstood earlier?
So naturally, the conclusion most people reach is, I must have messed something up. But that's usually not true. The surface explanation is always about execution, cutting accuracy, tool control, experience level. Those are the visible variables, and they matter to a point. But they're rarely the root cause. Because a woodworking project isn't just a series of cuts. It's a sequence, an order, a structure where every step depends on the one before it being complete and correct. And when that structure is broken, even slightly, the entire process becomes unstable. An incomplete plan doesn't just leave out information, it removes the logic that holds the project together. It skips the transition between steps. It assumes knowledge that isn't stated. It shows you what the finished piece looks like, but not how each part connects in real time. It's like being handed a map with landmarks, but no roads. You know where you're trying to go, but not how to actually get there. So you end up building based on interpretation instead of instruction. And that's the turning point most people don't recognize. The real issue isn't your ability to build, it's the absence of a complete, reliable sequence to follow. Once that sequence breaks, everything becomes guesswork. And guesswork in woodworking is expensive. Not just in terms of wasted lumber, but in time, energy, and confidence. You start hesitating before each cut, you double-check everything, you slow down not because you're being precise, but because you're unsure.
And eventually, that hesitation turns into avoidance. Projects get pushed to next weekend, then the weekend after that, until they quietly become part of that growing list of things you meant to finish. What's interesting is that most people don't quit woodworking because they lack interest. They quit because the process stops feeling predictable. When effort doesn't consistently lead to results, motivation fades. Not because the goal changed, but because the path to get there became unclear. And that's why complete plans feel different. Not easier, but clearer. Every measurement connects to a previous decision. Every step follows a defined order. There's no moment where you have to stop and invent the next move. You're not interpreting the build, you're executing it. That shift changes everything, because instead of constantly questioning whether you're doing it right, you start focusing on the craft itself, how the pieces fit, how the material behaves, how the final structure comes together. And that's where real progress starts to happen. Not when things become simpler, but when they become structured. If you want to understand what that structure actually looks like and how complete plans are designed to remove these hidden gaps, there's a structured breakdown linked in the description. It walks through the difference between surface instructions and faux build sequences and why that distinction matters more than most people realize. If this way of thinking about projects makes sense to you, subscribe. There's more to explore here.